Welcome guys to the first video of our YouTube channel. My name is Eurosius and today I will present to you the metagame of the current SMPU and the way it generally works. Of course, this video is made on my observation from the tier, so feel free to leave a comment if you ever want to debate about one of the topics. On this, let's start. The lack of recovery and staying power. If I had to describe the PU as a whole, I will start with its lack of staying power. And by that, I mean we're far from the OU where every Pokemon have Recover, Roast, Soft Boil, Poison Heal, Regenerator, Wish, and so on. Even if some of the Pokemon in the metagame can recover somehow, like Clefairy, Tangela, or Jellicent, a lot of defensive checks just can't. Among them you can count Regirock, Mudsdale, Claydol, and even defensive Lantern. The Volturd. Another factor that contributes to the lack of effectiveness of staying power in PU is the power of the Volturn. Where in the other tiers, we generally have a lot of immunities and ways to put pressure on the Pokemon who use these attacks, that's not the case here. Indeed, Pokemon who can use Volt Switch and who are part of the metagame as viable Pokemon can practically out-punish the ground types or possible immunities with their coverage moves. For the rest of the meta, they can just bring on the field an ally that has the advantage against the opponent Pokemon, which forces you most of the time to either make a sacrifice or switch again. One of the most popular Volt Switch user is Electros, who can basically spam Giga Drain against stuff like Mudsdale, Gastrodon, Quagsire, Volt Absorb Lantern, and etc. Since this Pokemon has the ability to levitate, they can't even punish it back. The same could be said for Lantern, Frostom, or Raichu too. Those Pokemon can use their strong second type stab or their coverage moves to pressure every ground types or immunities of yours. This, plus the fact that there is the Valleys and Persian Hay who can use viably Parting Shot, which also gives more opportunity to have a way of gaining momentum in a team. Hopefully, the ability Clear Body prevents this move to work properly, so stuff like Regirock, Carbink, and Metang can stop this kind of pivot. Spike Stack. Another phenomenon that contributes to this is the presence of excellent spikers in the tier like Frostlass, Quillfish, Ferroseed, and even Roselia. Among them, Frostlass and Quillfish have Taunt in their standard set, so using Defog in front of them is always complicated. It's even worse to clean the field from the hazards with Frostlass, since this Pokemon can practically outspeed every Defogger and has the useful Ghost type to Spin Block. In PU, the hazard stack is a very common strategy and is of course really strong against teams that rely on switches or that don't have any hazard removal. However, we have a decent enough number of Spinner or Defogger for team building to be hindered. When it's time to make a team, one of the first things you can see is the abundant presence of the water, ghost, grass, ice, and rock types. If you pay attention to the most common types on the board, you can see that most of the worst defensive types of the game are numerous, except for the water types. But since Game Freak created way too many water types, there is always a bunch of them in every tier, so this is not a surprise to see some from that type here. Of course, this board doesn't necessarily represent the truth when you're talking about the most played types. In PU, there is officially 0 fire type, but on the ladder or in competitions, you can often face Combuscane or Simisear, for example. Same with the bug types. There is almost no bug in PU, but if you look in ZU, there is just so many of them. It's just that the Pokemon from this type are generally bad. So even one of the lowest tier doesn't want them. Speaking of ZU, a lot of Pokemon in there are viable in PU, so don't be surprised if you encounter a lot of them. Every meta has their low rank mons that are usable in higher rank. After all, Quagsire and Gastrodon already left the PU for a long time because of that. Since the metagame is pretty aggressive, playstyles like offense teams are very popular. The idea behind offense is simple. attacking Pokemon that have common checks and counters or can defeat each other's checks and counters results in the counter being worn down. An example of this is fighting spam, using Girder and Band Primeape, for example, which share common counters to pound away at their similar counters, weakening them until one of them can sweep. Offense can usually be categorized into two sections, hyper offense and bulky offense. Bulky offense usually use pivots and Pokemon that can repeatedly remove hazards and continuously set up the rocks. Pokemon on bulky offense also tend to be more bulky than Pokemon found on hyper offense. Most of the time on bulky offense, Pokemon HP, defense, and special defense average out to around 80. Usually it consists of pivot, tilt track setters, hazard remover, and a wind coin. An example of bulky offense pivot is Electros. Electros is the best pivot in PU and fits into a lot of teams, having a useful defensive presence and using its wide array of moves in order to be an amazing wall breaker. A common bulky offense rocker is Mudsdale. Mudsdale is great defensive stealth rock setter, using its solid bulk, stamina, and ground type to keep massive traits such as Aggron, Lycanroc, Kangaskhan, Cider, and even Alolan Raichu in check. Because of Mudsdale's height attack and powerful stab earthquake, it has decent offensive presence and is far less passive than other defensive stealth rock setters like Regirock and Clefairy Air. One popular bulky offense hazard removal will be Silvally Fairy. Silvally Fairy is a solid support Pokemon with the ability to pivot out with Parting Shot, effective 95-95-95 bulk, and a solid defensive typing in Fairy. Additionally, it is fast enough to outspeed every relevant fighting and dark type, bar Primeape, which it spit ties with, and Alolan, Persian, and Absol, both of which can deal very much damage to it. Hyper offense in PU focuses on stacking hazard and or setting up dual screens from Electrode early on in the game, usually from turn 1, and then pounding away at the opponent team. With a solidly built team and enough offensive pressure, the opponent will not be able to remove hazards from Frostlass or any offensive rockers and will be slowly worn down, opening an opportunity for sweepers like Omastar. Hyper offense usually employs Suicide Lead, Pokemon that aim to get up the hazards as fast as possible. These Pokemon are usually fast. Sadly, there is not a lot of them in PU. Hyper offense is usually a Suicide Lead and 5 Sweeper or Wall Breaker that have good synergy with each other. Hyper offense can be quite tricky to play since this tier is aggressive and has a lot of priorities. Fast and threatening Scarfers are ways to keep the momentum. To give you an idea, one good Suicide Lead in HO is Lycanroc. Lycanroc is a solid Suicide Lead thanks to its height, attack, stellar speed tier, and access to Taunt, which prevents other leads to set up their hazards. Interesting Sweeper or Wall Breaker. An hyper offense is Caracosta. Caracosta finds its place in the PU metagame as a potent setup sweeper and wall breaker thanks to its access to Shell Smash, a stab priority move, respectable offensive presence, and a great physically defensive presence. Its typing, physical bulk, and ability Solirocks grant Caracosta multiple setup opportunities in front of normal and flying types in the tier, and its good attacking stats allow it to run a mixed set, able to break through a big portion of the tier. Its access to Aquajet gives it a nice niche over the other relevant Shell Smash user in the tier Omastar, since it allows Caracosta to break through some Choice Scarf users in the tier such as Primeape and Dodrio, as well as naturally faster Pokemon. Balance is another very dominant playstyle. Generally speaking, balanced teams have a couple of sweepers, backed up by a number of defensive walls and or tanks. Most balanced teams utilize entry hazards. The most successful balanced teams often revolve around a certain tree, while the other teammates seek to support and help guarantee a sweep by the said tree. So the basic premise of balance is a couple of offensive Pokemon and a couple of defensive Pokemon, and of course, hazard removal and hazard setter. The main problem with this playstyle is that almost every wall that you will put into your team might be food for Victreebel or Electros. With their popularity and their offensive statistic and moveset, they can easily punish Pokemon like Ferroseid, Clefairy, Gastrodon, and Quagsire, for example. This, plus the offensive aspects of the tier, doesn't help, in my opinion. Stall teams are usually based on switches and are composed of defensive Pokemon that have good synergy with each other. With the advent of Sun and Moon, many powerful new Pokemon were introduced, and trying to wall all of them constantly is very unrealistic and hard to do. Winning with Stall can be quickly a question of matchup, since there is too many traits to counter. Therefore, running a bulky setup sweeper on Stall team is now very common. The notion of sweeper here differs a bit from that on offense teams. An example of win-con for Stall is Peritom. Peritom's good defensive typing, which gives it 3 useful immunities to Fighting, Psychic, and Normal, and decent bulk, afford it great defensive presence. Peritom is also capable of acting as a bulky setup sweeper on bulkier team because of its access to Calm Mind. L teams in PU are an interesting concept. Most teams exploiting this strategy use Abomasnow or Aurorus as their health setter and Sandslash/Alolan as their health sweeper. The rest act as filler and is here to complete the type weaknesses and the missing roles. For example, the fire and fighting type coverage, hazard removal if no rapid spin on Sandslash, Stealth Rock if you choose Abomasnow over Aurorus, etc. I'm not going to talk about other styles of weather as they have become worse over the time and depends way too much on the matchup to be successful in my opinion, and do not even mention Trick Room. The PU is a tier that I like a lot and that will not stop fascinating me as its metagame changes constantly. A trend can quickly become outmoded, and with that proximity with the ZU, the possibilities are virtually unsteady. I hope I have been clear enough and have made you want to play it. Experiencing new horizons is always relevant. I tell you next time, but above all, never stop learning. It was Eurosius. Ciao.